Welcome viewers, this is IMAF TV once again. We appreciate you coming back with us. This is the day the Lord has made and we rejoice and be glad in it. We really appreciate you for coming, and we always remember that IMAF TV is here to bring hope to the hopeless and to make you understand Christ for yourself. Stay with us today as we discuss on the subject of lust. Lust. To me today to do such a wonderful discussion, it's Evans Barminta Sr. and Paul Essen. We are glad to have them here today, and we know it's going to be a very wonderful discussion and it's going to bless us all. So stay tuned as we bring the discussion to you. Before I start, I want them to introduce themselves to us a little bit, and then we continue with the discussion. So, Brother Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here. My name, like you rightly said, is Paul Essen, and I live in Decatur, and I'm married. And I love God's word. I love to do the work of God, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Yeah. We appreciate you. And
so thank you to be a panelist on your show. My name is Evans Barminta Sr. I live in Decatur, Atlanta, Georgia. I think that's all I will say for now. Thank you.
Okay. So, viewers, as you know, he is my husband, okay? So just keep that in mind. He's the idea behind this whole show, and so we are glad to have him and his perspectives about whatever happens. Okay, so like I said, our topic for discussion today is lust. Lust. So they are going to tell us a little bit about lust, and then we go in to discuss. If you have a comment, if you have a question, if you have a suggestion, don't forget to write it down there so that we can all address it, because we are all learning, okay? So please do that for us. We really appreciate that. So, Paul, can you tell us a little about lust?
Of course. So, lust, as I imagine it, is an intense, emotion, an intense longing, a strong desire for an object or an experience or a circumstance. And I should quickly say that this emotion or this desire or this longing could be for sexuality, could be for love, it could be for power, it could be for money, it could be for property, it could be for anything, any object at all in this world. And this lust is very synonymous to passion as we see it in the English dictionary, but quite different, in different contexts. Especially in Christianity, people think of passion as, a more godly, positive emotion, if I should say. And lust is usually classified as a negative emotion, just to give it a bit of a perspective. And even English speakers, right, the basic English definition, if you go to Google or wherever, would associate lust to a sexual desire.
Yes.
Which is okay to do, because it's one of the things that it refers to. But I imagine lust to be like a general, intense emotion. It's a desire. It's okay to call it a passion, another form of passion. Even though stronger and usually tilts to the negative side, it's not always so in that case. And I would use Exodus chapter 20, the 10 Commandments, and God says, do not covet.
Yes.
So that same word, covet, is also like desire, or like passion, or like lust, if you should say. And it's not necessarily in itself a negative desire or a sexual desire, as people would classify it to be, because do not lust in different contexts could mean different things. If you are lusting after someone's wife, then it could involve, or it does involve, sexual desire. But if you're lusting after someone's property or someone's field or someone's, head of animals, then that would not involve a sexual desire. It would involve a different level of intense, wish and emotion. So I would say lust is a deeper desire and emotion and passion for an object.
Thank you very much. My dear, can you add?
So what I would say is lust is an intense feeling or desire for something. And like my brothers rightly said, when we talk about, when I say something, here what I mean is like desire for food, desire for sex, desire for power, desire for authority. Yes. So another thing we have to know about lust is it is unquenchable. When I say unquenchable, what I mean is that it is something that cannot be satisfied. So, for instance, if you are lustful for money, let them give you let them combine all the world's money and give it to you. Still, you will not be content or you will not be satisfied. If you are lustful for women, let them give you all the women on the planet. You will still look for something. So lust is, in fact, something that we have to be very critical of as our life is concerned.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, insightful. Yeah. So, Brother Paul, what does the Bible say about lust? What we said was what we think about lust. What does the Bible say about lust?
Well, I should think honestly that in general the Bible says a lot about lust. For instance, in 1 John chapter 2, verse 16, the Bible talks about the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. It says that for everything in this world, the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life does not come from the Father, but it comes from the world. First Peter chapter 2, Galatians chapter 5 talks about the lust of the flesh, right? Where he talks about the lust of the flesh being in conflict with the desires of the spirit. And we can move on to talk about Genesis 3. We all know what happened in Genesis 3, the story of Adam and Eve and their deception by the serpent, and how the whole world fell along with them because of that action. And the description that was given to their desire for the fruit of the tree of life and of good and evil was that the fruit appeared to be desirous. It appeared to be nice for food. And because of its appearance and its look and they imagined that it would taste a certain way, and so they desired for it and pursued it. I think that also drifts, a little bit towards what lust could be in some sense. We could talk about Genesis 39, chapter 6. Genesis chapter 39 from verse 6 through 12. We all know the story of Joseph and Joseph's master's wife, and Potiphar, right? And Potiphar wanted to lie with Joseph. And the description that was given to Joseph was that Joseph was a good-looking young man.
Yes.
He was handsome. And the woman desired him. Of course, Joseph ignored, and we talk about that as a test. And Joseph passed the test, and he was accused falsely, and he went to prison for that. But underlying that desire, to me, is some sense of a lust for Joseph. We all know about David's story in 2 Samuel chapter 11, when David was on the roof of his palace, and he looked at a woman from that view, and he lustfully followed after Bathsheba, and we all know how it ended with Uriah being killed and all of that. But to me, that also points to one aspect of lust that we could, talk about. 1 Timothy chapter 6 talks about, the love of money being the root of all evil, like a strong desire, a pursuit of money that cannot be quenchable, and because of that, it traps you and misleads you and distracts your life. You know, it's the image that we see in that picture. We could talk about the prodigal son, right? In I think in Luke, I cannot remember that, but in Luke, the Bible talks about how this son, asked for his inheritance from his father and then fled away and spent all the money in riotous living, in wild living. And after a while, after he's wasted everything that he had nothing to feed on. And so he went to work in a, pig, quote unquote, a pig farm. And he desired, because of hunger, even the food that were given to the animals. That's a taste that, for me, points to what lust could be. I want to end with this passage saying that, this passage in James chapter 1, from the verse 13. I love it, and it is interesting because it talks about we not considering our temptations to be temptations from God, but that if we are tempted, then we are enticed by our own desires. And it says, after our desires have grown and developed, they become sin for us. And I love that passage because it kind of gives us the progression of where we start from in terms of our basic desires, and how those desires can evolve to be something that we cannot hold, and by that becomes sin for us. Not to say that lust is a sin, but to say that desire in that passage is a certain kind of an intense emotion that our handling of it, tells where it goes, whether it goes to the good side of it or the bad side of it. So generally, the Bible says vast number of things about lust. Some of them positive, some of them not too good. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Yeah. So, can you please tell us some of the differences between lust and love? Because they look similar, right? I mean, it can be used wrongly, rightly. Can you please,
So, to me, lust and love, when we talk about lust and love, two terms or two terminologies comes in mind. In other words, to be able to differentiate between love and lust, these two terms are common. The first one is emotional attachment and physical appearance. So love deals with emotional attachment, and lust deals with physical appearance. So here, what I want to mean is, with lust is triggered by vision, like what we see. So I become lustful, dependent on what I see. You see, then with love is an emotional thing. So, like the Hebrew will tell you that hesed, that is steadfast love. It is a love that is incomprehensible. It is unconditional. It is not backed by something, but it just comes from within. Yeah, so that is the difference between lust and love. Lust is concerned with physical appearance, and love is an emotional attachment. Yes.
Okay, that's insightful. That's really insightful.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that being said, can we just say that love has a little bit of lust in it?
I should think so, because if we should think of lust as a desire, a stronger desire, then definitely we have love, or a strong sense of love for things that we would consider like a lustful desire. Of course, we would have to be careful about the way we would use lust synonymous to love. You would not want to call something that you love as something that you lust for. But definitely, I should think that, in the course of loving and in the course of showing affection, not just to things, but also to human beings and to family relations, there would be a sense of passion and desperation that we will show that could, resonate what lust is in some ways. Yeah, I should think so.
Okay. So isn't lust normal?
Yeah, it would be difficult to say it is or it's not up front, but I thought about this question while we were preparing for this, and I feel like Judaism has something to say, has a very good thought to that. So in Judaism, there's a word called Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara basically refers to evil inclinations or evil, desires or passions. And these evil desires, in the thought of Judaism, does not come from the devil or from Satan. It is rather humans' misuse of, the basic things that the human body needs, right? Now, in contrast to Yetzer Hara, it's Yetzer Hatov, which is all positive desires and all positive feelings towards things. And, at the base of these two words is the word Yetzer in Judaism, which is desire. Now, the difference with these two is our handling of that desire, right? So if your desire has become Yetzer Hara, which is the evil inclination, then it is your use of your desire that has become that for you, right? But if your desire is Yetzer Hatov, then it is your handling of it that has pushed it to be a good one. That is to say that at the base of every love and every desire and every quote-unquote lustful feeling is this big question of how are we handling it? So I should think that it is normal in the sense that it is a desire that everyone needs for basic survival. Because without it, I cannot imagine how we would desire to be married, how we would desire to have a trade, because you desire to be in a certain field of work. That's why you are there. I don't know how we would desire to have kids, or people would desire to make certain things happen for themselves, because it is needful for our basic life. But of course, we also recognize that it can be dangerous.
Okay, viewers, thank you for such a wonderful discussion, panelists. We really appreciate it. We are learning a lot, because when we talked about lust, I was thinking negative right there and then. Yeah, I didn't have any other, but now I'm beginning to learn that it can be this way or that way. It all depends on how you use it. So we'll take a little break and we'll be right back with more on this discussion. So don't leave us. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Hello viewers, welcome back. We are glad you stayed with us. We have a lot more to say about this discussion. We really have a lot. So I'm coming back to you, my dear. How can lust be dangerous?
Lust can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Lust can be very dangerous. So I want to take us to scripture. I will be reading from the New Living Translation. Job 31:11 to 12. Job 31:11 to 12. For lust is a shameful sin, a crime that should be punished. Let us underline that word. A crime that should be punished. Let me go to the 12. It is a fire that burns all the way to hell. it will wipe out everything I owe. So I will say that lust in itself is a form of madness. And I believe William Shakespeare, one of the British great writers, will agree with me. And he said this. He said, lust is another form of madness. Now, lust can put people to shame and disgrace. The reason why I'm saying this is that, because of lust, a parent or a father will look at his daughter.
That one is real man.
Yeah. So he will look at his own biological daughter and lay or lie with her. Instances, sometimes you see that these ladies might even become pregnant. And also because of lust, people are incarcerated or sometimes they are sent to prison. So lust in itself is something that as individuals we have to be very critical of. We have to tame how.
The spirit of lust.
Yes, we have to tame the spirit of lust in our lives, because if we don't do that, it is going to put us to shame. For instance, lust for money. Somebody might be a manager at a workplace, and because he's so lustful for money, he might embezzle money from the coffers of the company. And at the long last, you'll be put to shame. So lust itself is something that we have to be very critical of. It can be very dangerous. It can be very dangerous.
Yeah, so viewers.
Yes. And to add again, somebody might have a wife or a husband, but because of lust, you see that this person will still be eager to go for another person's wife. And many of the time this happens. And like when it happens, you see that the people are put to shame. So lust is something that we have to be very mindful of, I think.
Thank you. Like it said that the evil men do lives after them. This is something that when you do, it can come back at you. It will put you to disgrace, like he said. So we have to be really mindful of. We have to tame it. I think it's something that is with us, just like the spirit fights with the flesh. It is something we constantly fight with, but we have to be aware of it and work hard at bringing it down so that disgrace is not coming our way. Incarceration is not coming our way. Other things is not coming our way. So let us all be mindful of this. It's very interesting. It is very good. We are learning, and I believe you are learning something. Somebody just asked, is love at first sight love? Is it love or lust? Is it infatuation? Does it end in long-term relationships? Does it last? How long does lust even last?
That's a very practical, I should say, even as a youth minister, like a very youthful question. I can imagine whoever is asking this might be a young person as well. I should think that right off of my head, as a young person, if you should meet someone that you like, and you call it love at first sight, you're very interested in this person and you want to pursue this person and you want to, have a relationship with this person. I believe that a number of things go into that first sight of that individual. I should think that from experience, you might be responding to natural admiration of something that is pleasing to your eye, which is good. That's how God created us to be attracted to things that we like. and things that are beautiful and things that are, admirable to us. It could also be that you are just overly blowing up your own natural desire to something that you would call love, but may not necessarily be love at that point. It could be the starting point of love, but it could also not be love in itself. And how do you differentiate between all of this? For me, the point is that every young person must be aware, that especially when you are drawing to someone, like we're talking about individual relationship with other people. Every young person must be aware that when you see someone that you like, there is a cluster of all kinds of emotions that arises within you. You have to be aware about that. And all of that may not necessarily be love at that point, and all of that may not also necessarily be lust at that point. It is what you make it to be. Of course, depending on how attractive that person is to you, at that moment, it could be like an instantaneous spark of lust, like the Bible talks about lust as fire, and how we are not able to keep that fire, because you cannot keep fire without it burning, right? It would definitely burn. Yeah. It would just blow up, and you cannot handle it, and it's just gone. And I like the fact that you talked about shame, you talked about disgrace, and all of that. That is important. So my point is, once you become aware that whatever is going on within you towards that person, at that first day that you met the person, could be love, it could not be love. It could be a cluster of all kinds of emotions. It could be infatuation, it could be admiration. And all of that is good. But that simple awareness that you need something more than admiration to make a relationship decision. You need something more than attraction to make a long-term relationship decision. You need what the Bible would call love, and even love at a different dimension, right? Like 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, describe what love is according to Paul. Like, love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't boast, it's not proud, it's not self-seeking, it doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing, and all those kinds of things. But most importantly, love doesn't fail, and love is patient, and love is kind. Based on this, I believe that a relationship decision, beyond all the emotions that you're feeling or you will be feeling towards that person that you meet at first sight, I believe that a relationship decision should be based on love, which according to 1 Corinthians 13:4 is patience and kindness. And I love what patience is in different terms. Like, patience is long suffering, patience is steadfast love or steadfastness, patience is waiting for a long time without losing it, right? So I would say put all of that emotions that you're feeling at that first sight for that person that you just saw on a time scale, and give yourself time, and check yourself after 3 months, and ask yourself, do I feel the same way I felt about that person that first day, before you make a decision? Better still, put yourself on like a 1-year timeline, on a 2-year timeline, and then check, be friends with this person, do other things, just be around this person. But before you make a decision, instead of making that decision on the first day, put yourself on a time scale and see how you feel. Because love needs to last. Love needs to stay for a long time. Love needs to be persistent, and a relationship decision is going to last for a long time, especially if you're talking about marriage, right? It's forever. It's for better and for worse. And we hope that it will last 30 years after you see that person that first day. We hope that it will last 40 years after you see that person. But it all depends on how well you handle that first sight, feeling, that first sight emotion, towards that person. So love at first sight is possible. But don't ever make a love decision that first day. Okay. That's basically my point. Okay.
Thank you. I think, can you add to it? What do you think?
So I think I'll add something to it. What I would say is you have to check yourself and ask questions as what I feel. Is it an emotional feeling, or is it something that is triggered by just the appearance? So I want us to know that last, as we know is always selfish.
Yeah.
But love is an emotional attachment. In other words, love is something that is not selfish. It is something which is loyal. Yeah. So we have to be careful of these two terms.
Yeah.
And whatever we do we have to know that it's going to come into judgment.
Yeah.
So we have to ask ourselves, we have to be critical.
Yeah.
Because what we will do, or our decisions,
Yeah.
will God approve of it?
Yeah.
Is it going to be pleasing to God?
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful with love at first sight.
Yeah. And I think, in some ways, this question about love as first sight, and it's also for me, an underlying big question is the difference between what love is and what lust is, right? Because the question is, so what I'm feeling right now, is it love? Like, I like this person, and this person is good, and I like the flow. Is it love, or and I think that's where the biggest thing is.
Yes.
And I like the fact that you talked about loyalty. Because love is loyal. Like, Jesus gave us an example of what love is in the mind of God, like what God expects of our love, and what God defined for us, even by God's own example to us, what love should be. And it's not self-seeking, it's everlastingly unconditional. And even for me, in some ways, even though love incorporates or involves some level of feelings, and feelings are important, and experiences are important, I believe that, for a long-term relationship based on love, it involves some level of decision, like some commitment, some some mind work. It involves their mind as well as it involves emotions, right? Because young people are, always towards emotions. We all feel it. We all love it. It's nice. But can we be committed to this person? That should be one of the ways that you should, knowing this person, knowing the way this person talks, beyond how the person looks like. Knowing everything in the world of this person. Is this person someone I can be loyal to? Is this person someone I can make a decision for? Is this someone I can sacrifice something that I so dearly cherish for? If you ask yourself these hard and difficult questions, and you cannot find yourself doing that, not just today, but tomorrow and tomorrow next, then I think that it should tell you that, well, perhaps what you're feeling is temporarily, or is temporal, and you cannot, persist with that feeling.
Okay. Thank you very much for such an insight on this subject. We really appreciate it. And viewers, I believe you are learning a lot from this.
Yeah.
It's really a thin line. So you have to be very careful as to which one you are looking at as lust and love. It's a thin line. The lust is just temporal, like he said, but love goes more. It goes more. It's unconditional. It's forever. So we have to be able to tell the difference so that we are not falling into this temptation of lust. So, my dear, how can one handle lust? Some of the ways. Because it happens to us. We can't deny it. In as much as we want to deny it, it's there. It's something we work with, just like sin. But how do we handle it?
All right, thank you very much. So there's this thing that I want to say. Light has come. To me, I think light has come. But people love darkness than light. We have to be very careful with what we watch on Facebook. Of late, you will see people posting nude pictures.
Oh my goodness.
And when you look at it, you will see the number of views. But if you want to post something that will be very beneficial, people will not look at them. So in order to handle lust, you have to be very careful
What you see.
what you go to Facebook or what you look at on Facebook.
That's right.
Then we also have to avoid tempting situations. We have to avoid double looks. We have to avoid double looks. So, like if you see something, you look at it once, and you feeling something within, and you feel it is going to land you in the wrong way, then you have to avoid a second look. That is very, very important. Then I also want us to practice consistent prayer.
Oh yeah.
Yes, consistent prayer. Without prayer, we can do nothing. Because it is God who gives us the strength to remain in His love, to remain in what we require of, He requires of us. Yeah. So be consistent with prayer. Be consistent with prayer. Check yourself. Ask yourself, where am I lastful? Do I last after money? Do I last after power? Do I last after sex? Just be mindful of all these things. Check and pray towards it. And I believe God is faithful and merciful to answer our prayers if we will diligently seek Him in such situations. You know, sometimes people are entangled in lust. It is not their will, or they don't have the willingness to do what they do. You see, but it's like it's an edge. It just comes, and you are entangled to go and do it. So in this case, prayer is very, very, very important. The last thing I want to talk about is consider the consequences. Because if you are mindful of this, then you be careful with your actions.
I hear you.
Yes.
It's very true. Yeah, the question. Can you add?
I mean, you've given such a brilliant exposition. I would say, let us also be mindful that desire in itself is not necessarily a bad thing, and we talked about this at the beginning. So based on that, I would say that, we must handle our desires and our emotions and our feelings as gifts from God. And in that light, I would say we should handle it as like faithful stewards of God's gift to us, because it is with that mindset that we can be able to keep and handle our feelings in ways and use our feelings in ways that will please God, right? Yes. So let's handle our desire as a gift from God. 1 Timothy 3 talks about he that desires the office of the bishop desires a good thing. Like you could desire good things. The psalmist prayed and says, let the meditations of my heart, be acceptable and be pleasing to you. It says, search me, O God, and see if there be any evil in me, and cleanse me, make me holy, put me back on the path that is straight. All of that reminds me of faithful stewardship of our desires, because desire is a good thing. And I like the fact that you talked about, praying and stuff like that, because Paul suggests a very good model to handling our emotions and our desires. Galatians 5 talks about walking in the Spirit. Which is one of the ways, walking and living your life in ways that are conscious of the Spirit and that are conscious of God. And prayer definitely is one of the important things. But I definitely cannot finish this without talking about Paul's biggest model in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 27. Self-discipline, yes. Right? Like being mindful of, the consequences of lust and what your desire can do. Another way of saying that is also saying that we ought to be self-disciplined. Yes. Like 1 Corinthians 9:27, Paul says that I keep my body disciplined. I keep it as a slave. I master myself. I handle my emotions in ways that after I have preached to you, I myself will not be a victim of the things that I preach to you. Yes. Which is very important. So learning to be self-disciplined, learning to be self-controlled is a very important skill and gift that all of Christians need to have. Galatians 5:22 talks about the fruit of the Spirit, and one of the biggest ones that it highlights is the gift of self-control, the fruit of self-control that has to emanate and flow through our lives. And ultimately, trust God to live a life that pleases God.
Oh, wow. We've had such a wonderful discussion today. I believe we've learned a lot. I have learned a lot about that. It's all about self-discipline. You have to discipline yourself. It is there, yes, we are humans, it's in us. But you have to make a conscious decision and effort that I am going to give my ways to that of God's ways so that I can handle some of these pressures of this life. So please, when you listen to this, share it with another person. comment, suggest, so that we will know what you are thinking too. What do you think about this subject? We want to know too. We are also learning. So don't just leave us. Comment, share, and like our page on YouTube and on Facebook. I really appreciate our producer, Mr. Alfred Apia, who is behind the scene, making all this happen. We really appreciate him. And everybody else who is with us. Papa Paul's wife is right here with us, cheering us on. And we really appreciate everybody who helps this program come into being. We really love you, our viewers. And we will be with you same time next week. Don't leave us. Go look at this video. It's very educative. Share it with people. Just like he said, when people put negative stuff, people watch it. But when it's positive, they don't have time to look at. But this is going to change your life and that of somebody you know. So please do watch it. And we'll see you next time, next week, same time. We really appreciate you. And remember, this is IMAC TV. We are touching lives where necessary. Thank you, and God bless you. Bye-bye.